Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming together as the church this morning. Thank you for gathering as the church this morning. Thank you for being a part of something incredible as we join with millions of people all over the world this morning who gather to celebrate, we gather to worship, we gather to come together in fellowship with each other. We are part of something that time and circumstance cannot defeat, the greatest gathering of people ever, the church. So thank you for being a part of that this morning. Today we are very fortunate, very blessed to listen to a couple of men who have been a part of a ministry that Shiloh has been a part of for nearly 10 years now. If you've been with us for the last couple of weeks, then you know that we are spending the month of April looking at the ministries that are a part of Shiloh, the ministries that we financially support as a church. 2 weeks ago, we got to hear from Colleen and Onesimo about the work at the orphanage in Mexico. Last week, we got to hear from Charles in Kenya, which was a phenomenal message that we were so blessed by. And today we get to hear from Jon and Tim. And as you will hear in just a minute, Jon and Tim have been involved with New Horizons from the very beginning. This is Jon's brainchild. Jon shared in this message about an experience that kind of brought him to creating New Horizons House. And it's a hard message to listen to. The message today is going to bother some of you. It was difficult to listen to, much more difficult than I expected it to be. But it also reminded me of the importance of what we do as a church and what we are a part of. As I mentioned last week, so many of us, we give to the church and we know that the money is being used, but we don't always get to see, we don't always get to hear the stories, we don't always get to see that fruit. And this month has certainly changed that. The last 2 weeks have changed that, and today will be no different. For all of you who are a part of the church, every time that you come, every time that you show up on Sundays, we take account and we give money based on our attendance to New Horizons House. We've done this for years and years and years. When New Horizons House was trying to get off the ground, Jon had come and said, hey, we're trying to get some seed money together to start this. We need to raise, I don't remember all the numbers, it was like $10,000. And so we brought the need to the church, to Shiloh. And in one night we raised like $18,000 or something like that, something ridiculous. Blew it out of the water, came up with the seed money. And so we have been, as a church, involved with New Horizons House since before a shovel was put into a ground, since before a girl was rescued from being trafficked. Shiloh has shared a heartbeat with New Horizons for 10 years now. A couple of weeks ago, it's about a week and a half ago, a group of us got to go to a fundraiser in Denver for New Horizons, and the speaker that they had, she talked about her work in fighting trafficking, and she said one of the things that's so difficult about sex trafficking is that it's hard to talk about because nobody wants to hear about it. It bursts our bubble that we live in. It disturbs everything inside of us. It's troubling, it's horrific, it's tragic, it's full of trauma, it doesn't make sense, it breaks things that we have tried to build to protect ourselves, and it disrupts so much. And because of that, talking about sex trafficking, trying to raise money for sex trafficking is so difficult because nobody wants to hear about it. For us as a church, it is a blessing to know that we have been a part of this from the beginning. The money that we give to Shiloh is a part of this ministry. It has been involved in the stories. It has been involved in girls being rescued that we will never meet, girls we will never know. But it's our story. There's a video that has been put together that we will share with you after Jon speaks. And for all of you watching, I want you to know, much like last week and the week before and next week, that these stories are our stories as a church. We don't have a building. We don't have some big project. But we have ministries. We have lives. We have orphans. We have girls being trafficked. We have a need, we have a cause, we have a vision, we have a purpose as a church that we share together as a church. So while the message this morning I know is going to hurt some of you, it'll move some of you, it's not a bad thing, and it will remind you of the importance of what we are doing right now at Shiloh Christian Church as we build faith, as we restore hope, and as we show love to the world around us.
Hey there, Shiloh. Thanks for inviting us up to give you an update of how your ministry dollars are being spent at New Horizons to advance the kingdom. You guys have been one of our longest term partners, and we sure appreciate what you guys have been doing with us over the years. So one of the things I wanted to do today was to just kind of give you the update. New Horizons just celebrated our 10th year as an organization, and our 6th year of having girls. And so I just wanted to be able to share with you a little bit about the journey, how we got started, for those of you that don't know, and then give you an update of where things are today and where we're headed. So back about 10 years ago, I was working as the chief operating officer for a nonprofit that was putting clean water systems in around the world. And in that role, I attended a nonprofit fair down in Denver. And I met a guy who had told me that he was involved with an organization that was helping to rescue girls from human trafficking. And I didn't even know that was a thing at the time. I'm like, really? This was 2014. I said, in 2014, we're still dealing with that? And he said, oh yeah, there's actually more people enslaved today than at any other time in history. And so anyways, I was shocked and intrigued both at the time, and got to be friends with this guy over the next couple months. And he ultimately asked me to be on his board. And I said, well, before I do that, I'd love to take a trip with you to India to just see what it is you do and learn more about human trafficking. And so he said, yeah. So it was the summer of 2014. I took my first trip to India with him. And as part of that trip, we went to the red light district just outside of Mumbai, which is the largest red light district in the world. And we went into this dance bar, and it was a bar kind of similar to what we're recording in today, although it's obviously got a different purpose. But it was just a bar like you'd go to here. They sat us down at a table, they brought us drinks, we ordered some food. And there was a lot of music in the background, just kind of dance bar as you might expect. And then after about an hour, they turned the music way down and the lights went way down. And there was a stage up front, and they opened the curtain, and all these girls filed onto the stage, and each of them had a number that they were wearing around their neck. And you could basically order any of the girls up on the stage, and then they had rooms in the back that you could take these girls and do whatever you wanted to do, and then you could leave. And the other option was to actually purchase a girl, and you could own her permanently. And so these girls were, at the time, these girls were ages 8 all the way up to 18. And I mean, I was shocked, as you might expect, even though I knew it was coming, to be able to see an 8-year-old girl being sold. And as you might expect, these girls, especially the younger ones, were just really terrified. And anyways, that evening, we agreed with the proprietor to actually purchase a girl, one of the younger girls there. She was 12. She was a virgin, and so they could get a lot of money for her. So we agreed to meet the trafficker the next day at a local McDonald's restaurant. It was fairly close to the bar there, so we met him the next evening at a local McDonald's restaurant. He brought the girl, and we chit-chatted for a few minutes, and then as soon as the money changed hands, then the police came in and arrested the trafficker. And so this girl ended up not being sold for sex, but most of the other girls we had seen the previous evening didn't have that benefit. They weren't so lucky. And so, anyways, that was a really formative experience for me. And I had taken my daughter to India actually when she was 12, several years earlier. And so you couldn't help but think, except for her being born here, that easily could have been her story. So when I got back to Colorado, I decided at that time not to be part of his organization, primarily because there was no plan for these girls after they were rescued. Most of them would end up right back on the streets within a matter of weeks because they just had no other skill set, no other options for their lives. And so I decided, though, at that point to found an organization which was New Horizons House, and that was designed to be a place where these girls could come after rescue, where they could live in safety, where they could be loved, where they could develop the skills necessary to go on and live full, independent, fulfilling lives. And so over the next several years, from basically 2014 to 2016, ended up raising the funds, forming a board, and we ended up purchasing about 3 acres of land on the southeast coast of India in the state of Andhra Pradesh. And at that point, we then had a capital campaign to raise the funds, and we built 2 beautiful buildings. One was kind of a kitchen / office / school building, and the other was a 3-story dormitory building. And so then we got approval from the Indian government to actually open, and we started receiving girls in 2018. And so fast forward to today, 2024, and we've now got 73 girls at our facility. They range in age from 11 up to 21. And we have 2 homes, the main home, which I just described to you. And then once the girls turn 18, they were no longer permitted to live at the safe house there that we had established. So we formed a second home called the transition home, which is where the girls who are a little older, who want to go on to university, who want to maybe take business classes to open their own small businesses, or just take additional college courses. So that was the goal in establishing the second home. And so right now, like I said, we have 73 girls that we currently care for in both the safe house and the transition home. We've been expanding a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. We've grown by about 500%, and we just added 3 girls this past month. So it continues to grow in scope and also in the breadth of the services that we offer these girls. The 4 basic kind of components to our program involve medical care, trauma counseling, education, and vocational training, and those kind of form the pillars of our program. And then also just the community that these girls establish amongst themselves, letting the girls know that they're not alone, that there are other people that do understand what's happened to them. And our staff, of course, is kind of the keystone to that, to making sure that they know that they're loved and supported. Just recently, we held our 10-year celebration up in Denver. Some of you, I think, had the chance to attend, but probably most of you didn't. And at that event, we were able to share a brief video that we put together where we heard from 4 of the girls that have gone through our program, and just kind of their story and what they're doing now. And so I wanted to give you all a chance to see that video, because your support is helping make that possible. And so We're going to take a break here and we're going to show that video. So anyways, thank you again for your support, and I hope that this video is informative and inspiring for you.
అని చెప్పి బాధపడేదాన్ని. మెచ్చిన దగ్గర నుంచి నన్ను హెచ్ఆర్ఐ చేయించడం చేశారు.
నన్ను అటు ఇటు ఆ ఊళ్ళు ఈ ఊళ్ళు తిప్పించిన డబ్బు బాగా తినేసింది. నాకు బాగాలేదన్నా కూడా కష్టంగా చేపించేది. చెల్లెలో ఒక ఇంటికి తీసుకెళ్ళిపోయి నన్ను పడేసింది ఆ రూమ్లో. వాళ్ళు 10 మంది వరకు ఉన్నారు. నన్ను దారుణంగా.
India, in a number of cases, has been listed as the epicenter of human trafficking, the most dangerous place in the world to be a woman.
గోడలకు గుద్దేసేవాడు, తలుపులు గుద్దేసేవారు, మంచానికి గుద్దేసేవారు. మా నాన్న కూడా నేను ఆ ఒంటి మీద ఘాట్లు.
A little over a decade ago is when I was first introduced to the problem of human trafficking, and at the time I didn't really understand how big a problem it was and how pervasive it was.
Young girls get kidnapped and you just don't even understand the fright and danger and trauma that's gonna change their lives.
Most of the girls would end up back on the streets because they had no other options, no other skills, no other ways to earn a living.
మంది బాయ్స్ ఉన్నారు, 15 మంది దాకా ఉన్నారు. సర్లే వాళ్ళందరూ నన్ను చూసిన తర్వాత నన్ను పంపించేశారు అక్కడ నుంచి. నాకు బాడీ నిండా డ్రగ్స్ ఇచ్చేసి బీర్లు అన్నీ తాగిచ్చేసి మొత్తం ఇచ్చేసేసారు. నన్ను చేసేసిన తర్వాత అక్కడి నుంచి అలా
తర్వాత మళ్ళీ 2 లక్షలు తీసుకున్నారు. ఇంకా ఆ రోజు అయిపోయిన తర్వాత రెండోసారి వేరే ఆయన దగ్గరికి 50,000 దగ్గర మాట్లాడారు. చాలామంది దగ్గర పంపించి చాలా డబ్బులు తీసుకున్నారు. ఇంకా అలా పోగొట్టుకోవడం వల్ల నాకు చాలా బాధ అనిపించింది. చాలామంది అడిగారు.
I just thought we can do better. We can do better than this. I had an established relationship with Esther and Johnson over in India. Directors of an orphanage, a school, medical clinic.
In India at that time, they asked me that I can be a part of New Horizons, a safe house. At the time, I don't have any idea of trafficking. When I saw the websites, I literally cried.
They took several months to think about that and research that on their own, and they came back, obviously, and said yes.
I could see the passion between Johnson and Esther, and I just knew that this was really truly something for the long term.
We raised the funds, purchased the property, and then we started a capital campaign to construct a beautiful dormitory building and then an admin/school/office building.
So then, in 2018, we started our New Horizons safe house in Podu.
It's not just a house, but it really is a home. They're surrounded by gardens. There's a mangrove grove there. It's just a place that it just is peaceful, serene, and it really lends itself to holistic restoration.
17 రోజుల తర్వాత ఇంకా సిడబ్ల్యూ సార్ వాళ్ళు ఈ హోమ్కి పంపించారు. ఈ హోమ్కి పంపించిన తర్వాత చాలా హ్యాపీగా ఉన్నాను అమ్మ.
ఇక్కడ తీసుకొచ్చిన తర్వాత ఇక్కడ ఇన్ని ఫెసిలిటీ చూసిన తర్వాత నా హ్యాపీ చాలా వచ్చింది. నేను ఇప్పుడు చాలా హ్యాపీగా ఉన్నాను. ఇక్కడ అందరూ ఇష్టం, నాకు ఈ పిల్లలు ఇష్టం, ఈ హోమ్ ఇష్టం, అందరూ ఇష్టం.
ఇక్కడికి వచ్చాక నేను ఏదైతే కోరుకున్నానో అది నాకు దక్కింది. ఇక్కడ రూమ్స్ బాగున్నాయి, హోమ్ చాలా నచ్చింది. గ్రౌండ్ ఉంది, పెద్ద గ్రౌండ్ ఉంది ఆడుకోవడానికి.
అమ్మ ప్రేమ, నాన్న ప్రేమ అందరు కుటుంబం అంతా ఇక్కడే ఉన్నారని అనుకుంటున్నాను నేను.
ఇంతమంది అక్కలు, ఇంతమంది ఫ్రెండ్స్, ఇంతమంది చెల్లెలు.
ఇలాంటి లైఫ్ నాకు దొరుకుతుందని నేను అనుకోలేదు. సో ఇక్కడికి వచ్చిన తర్వాత నాకు చాలా ఆనందంగా ఉంది.
కోసం నేను చూస్తున్నాను, నా లైఫ్ కోసం నేను చూస్తున్నాను. నేను మళ్ళీ నా లైఫ్ నేను పోగొట్టుకున్న లైఫ్ నాకు దొరికింది. నేను చాలా నరకం చూసానేమో బయట.
చాలా హ్యాపీగా ఫీల్ అవుతున్నాను నేను ఇక్కడికి వచ్చినాక. నేను బాగా మారాను. మా అమ్మ.
The transformation in their faces is visible.
Just a change in their countenance, a change that reflects hope, joy that just wasn't there when they first arrived.
డల్గా ఉన్నప్పుడు నాకు ఎంకరేజ్ చేసి ఇలా ఉండాలి, లైఫ్లో ఇలా ఉండాలి, నువ్వు గతాన్ని గుర్తెచ్చుకోకూడదు, నీ లైఫ్లో నువ్వు ముందడుగు వేసుకోవాలి అని చెప్పేసి అన్న తర్వాత
ఇక్కడ నుంచి బయటకు వెళ్ళిపోయేటప్పుడు నేను ఒక గోలుతో వెళ్తాను.
We've seen hundreds of girls go through our program, either the safe house and or the transition house.
These young women grow and flourish, and have marriages, children, businesses, go to university, become doctors. There's no limits to their dreams now.
ఇక్కడ మ్యారేజ్ చేసుకున్నాను. అక్కడి నుంచి వచ్చిన తర్వాత పెద్ద మిషన్స్ ఇచ్చారు. బాగా రన్ అవుతుంది నా బిజినెస్. నా లైఫ్ ఇకపై నుంచి ఇంకా బాగుండొచ్చు అని నా ఎక్స్పెక్ట్.
అమ్మ వాళ్ళు మిషన్లు ఇచ్చారు, వాళ్ళకి నేను కూడా హెల్ప్ చేస్తున్నాను.
మ్యారేజ్ అయింది, నాకు ఒక బాబు. నాకు ఇలాగే ఇంకా ఆశ ఉంది చేసుకోవాలని, వ్యాపారం ఇలాగే కంటిన్యూ చేయాలని చాలా ఆశ ఉంది.
నర్సింగ్ నుంచి నేర్చుకున్నాను, అలాగే కంప్యూటర్ బేసిక్స్ కూడా నేర్చుకున్నా.
ఇట్లా ఈ మిషన్స్ ఇచ్చినందుకు థ్యాంక్ యూ. అమ్మ వాళ్ళకి, అక్క వాళ్ళు నన్ను బాగా చూసుకున్నందుకు. ఇప్పటికి ఉపయోగపడుతుంది ఈ మిషన్స్, నాకు నా ఫ్యామిలీకి ఉపయోగపడుతుంది.
నా ఫ్యూచర్ కూడా బాగుంటుంది. ప్రజెంట్ నేను విజయవాడలో ఫ్యాషన్ ఫ్యాక్టరీలో వర్క్ చేస్తున్నాను యాజ్ అ సేల్స్ ఎగ్జిక్యూటివ్ ప్లస్ క్యాషియర్. చాలా హెల్ప్ఫుల్ అవుతుంది.
It's just a beautiful picture of how it evolves when you serve the human heart.
We can't do everything to solve the problem, but we can do something. And we're going to see not only a change in individual girls, but in the attitude towards women, the attitude towards girls.
We could spread that holistic model, actually creating a model that works for safe houses around the world.
లైఫ్లో ఎవరికి అదృష్టం దొరకదేమో, నాకు దొరికింది. నేను చాలా వరకు
చాలా బాగుంది ఇక్కడ, సంతోషంగా ఉంటున్నా. థ్యాంక్స్ అన్న, సార్ వాళ్ళకి మీకు కూడా మమ్మల్ని చక్కగా చూసుకుంటున్నందుకు.
థ్యాంక్ యూ టు NHH. నా లైఫ్ ఇప్పుడు చాలా బాగుంది. చాలా థ్యాంక్స్. న్యూ హారిజన్స్ సేవ్ హౌస్కి రుణపడి ఉంటాను.
Hello, my name's Tim Hilmer, and I'm a board member for New Horizons House. And I've traveled twice to India to visit the facility, and I've had a chance to meet our staff and the girls there. One other thing I might mention, John Spencer, our founder, John and I have been friends for over 45 years, so we bring a pretty strong friendship to this work, and it's my privilege to support John in his endeavors. I just wanted to thank Shiloh for putting your Christian faith into action and supporting us. I know that your mission, build faith, restore hope, and show love, is really powerful, and I think it's one that we really share at New Horizons House as well. And I know that your ministries that you support, the orphanage in Mexico, the church in Kenya, the health clinic in Fort Collins, and that we're part of that, and it's a real honor to be kind of a member of that group. So thank you so much. What I'd like to talk about today is a little more specific about what we do at New Horizons House in India to support the 73 girls that John talked about. I kind of want you to know where your money is going and how we might utilize it in a very specific way. Many of the girls that come to us at New Horizons House are experiencing trauma, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And trauma, if you want to know a definition of it, a wound, especially one produced by sudden physical injury, or an emotional shock that creates substantial and lasting damage to the psychological development of an individual. One of our board members, Pastor Steve Curtis, who's also a therapist, was in India last year, and he worked with our staff in India, and he taught 3 courses. And most of them, these classes were about trauma. One was on basic counseling with trauma, one was on the nature of trauma, and the last was on secondary trauma. In other words, how do you spot the symptoms of it and how do you treat it? So one critical element that New Horizons, our staff at New Horizons House provides in their training is the complexity of trauma. When the girls arrive, so many of them are dealing with this. Many of them have been severely abused and assaulted and raped. So when they arrive, the staff interviews them and hears their story to kind of understand what their life has been like. And many of the girls talk about having been trafficked or sold even by members of their own family, which you can just imagine how horrible that must be. Many were seduced and betrayed by people they thought they could trust. Many arrive at the safe house in a state of deep shock and fear, unable to trust others, and in some cases to see any purpose in their lives. And the staff of New Horizons House, our house mothers, our teachers, our counselors, our nurses, understand trauma and its devastating effects. So they surround a new girl with love, comfort, and patience, as well as an understanding of what they're going through. And a counselor, for example, might even use something very complex like a type of treatment called EMDR, which stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing Therapy, to treat the trauma or the PTSD that the girl is dealing with. And this process involves performing specific eye movements that are guided by a counselor to focus on traumatic or emotionally charged memories and to reprocess them. Not to kind of trigger again, but to reprocess them in a safe and healthy environment. And this is a critical part of this young girl's healing. And again, Steve Curtis, who has expertise in this, worked with our staff and trained them. When a new girl arrives who's experiencing trauma, another example of how we help, a house mother might stay with that girl every night in her room to kind of help her deal with night terrors, any kinds of things that might trigger her. Some girls arrive so traumatized that they might even want to try and escape from our safe house to return to their pimps and abusers because it's the only world they really know. And our staff security at New Horizons House works closely together to make sure the girls are safe. And if one does escape, they then work closely with the local police department to find the girl and to safely return her to the safe house. And at the hub of all this is our directors, Johnson and Esther Medidi, who are just incredible people. They actually visited Colorado last year and spoke at our fundraising event. They are brilliant ambassadors of love, compassion, and faith. They're very well connected within the community where New Horizons House is, and really understand how to, take the money that they're sent, which we're very honored with, and use it to the very best to help the girls. And I'd like to close, along with being a board member for New Horizons House, I'm a retired school teacher, but I'm also a writer and the father of 2 daughters. And I write sometimes about what I'm learning from this experience being on the board for New Horizons, about going to India. And I wrote a poem recently called The Source. And it's dedicated to the sisters of New Horizons House in India, the 73 sisters that are over there. And I guess it's a poem about sisterhood and what the girls go through on their journey to get to New Horizons House and what it might be like once they arrive. It's called The Source. There is a river within each of you, as timeless as mountain and ocean, and pure as early snow in a season of fire. The only clear guide to locate the source of this river are the ancient stories passed on by other sisters who have traveled the path and found their way home. Begin by looking inward, past skin and muscle and flesh, past ghosts that offer nothing but venom and curses and shadow. Walk on with your sister and remember when you first stepped into sunlight and smiled at its bright arc, when you first touched water and felt it ripple across your fingertips, when you first smelled rain and then waited for its grand arrival, when you first tasted mango and closed your eyes to savor the enduring sweetness, when you first embraced another and felt that warmth returned, when you first silently prayed for answers to the mystery of tears. Now clasp your sister's hand and pull close as you follow the path of those who came before you and resisted the fate of a windowless cell, who fought against the forced entry, the savage intrusion, then refused to obey the rules of the night. Look for your sister's footprints in the soil, a thread of cloth lingering on a branch, the faint scent of incense and sweat followed by the distant glow of a lamp beyond the acacia branches. Then trace the curve of trail and road to the source of that river, the Lord of Light. where you forgive and find shelter, no matter the storm, no matter the crossing, no matter the divide. Stay close to that river within each of you and climb to where your sisters wait in a circle of welcome. Thank you, Shiloh, for your support. We deeply appreciate it.
Good morning, Shiloh. We spent some time talking about what is a pretty dark and difficult subject today. And so to close us out, I want to move into talking a little bit about the word hope and what that means, specifically in the context of Jesus. What it means, a little bit about what it doesn't mean, and then how we should live our lives in light of having that hope. And I want to start us off with a quote from C.S. Lewis in his book, Mere Christianity. It says, "Hope is one of the theological virtues. This means that a continual looking forward to the eternal world is not, as some modern people think, a form of escapism or wishful thinking, but one of the things a Christian is meant to do. It does not mean that we are to leave the present world as it is. If you read history, you will find that the Christians who did most for the present world were just those who thought most of the next." I feel like people can often trivialize hope as just this sort of like overly optimistic thing that glosses over pain and suffering, where you have this tendency to just at least-ify things, where you say, well, at least it's not this, or at least we have this. And I think sometimes as Christians, we can tend to drift towards that direction when we think about Jesus and what he did for us and the future that he's going to be bringing to the world. As we can say, yes, these are all horrible things that are happening, but at least we have Jesus, and at least we have this future to look forward to. And while I think that's directionally true, where we should look at the future that way, in the sense of we do have something to look forward to, if we look at how the biblical authors viewed hope, what it really was this like confident expectation of the future. And when you specifically look at how the disciples viewed that in the light of Jesus, it wasn't just this passive hope of, we know that he's coming back someday and will restore the world, and therefore we can just turn a blind eye to all of the horrible things and all of the evil that are happening in the world. So there's really two sides of hope that I think it's important for us to focus on. One side of it is what Jesus did on the cross and what that means for the future. And that is the side of hope where we can look at it and say, Jesus came and he died on the cross, and the big picture meaning of that act was that it was the first step towards restoring the entire world and restoring creation to the original design that God meant for it. The actions of humans corrupt the world and corrupt that original creation. And Jesus, through what he did on the cross, initiated that process of restoring the world. And so, yes, we do have that future hope to look toward. But if you look at the actions and the life of Jesus while he was here on earth, it was not this sort of passive, just telling people about the future. And, you don't have to do anything because I'm going to fix everything. He was active in the world and expected his disciples, and I think expects us to do the same thing. And so the other side of hope is not just we have this to look forward to, but it's also in light of that fact and in light of what I know about how Jesus lived, how he confronted evil, how he responded to it, what he expected of his disciples, and what he then in turn expects of us is, how do we then live in light of that knowledge? And he's given us a bit of a blueprint in his life and the way that he confronted evil. And you see several times throughout the New Testament, he's telling the people following him that by emulating him, we become the light of the world. And we are able to partner with him in bringing about this new, renewed kingdom that God has planned for the world. And so, hope is not about closing our eyes to evil because Jesus has it handled, but it's about having confidence that Jesus has begun the work of restoring the world, and to look to him as an example for how we should confront evil, and that our efforts to do that are not in vain. So, as we prepare to take communion today and reflect on what Jesus did, think about not just being grateful for what he did, although you should absolutely do that, but also think about then how you should be living in the world and what you can do to confront evil and to respond to evil in the world the way that Jesus responded to evil when he was alive. Because by emulating him and by standing up to and confronting evil the way that he did, by shining a light to the world, we can then help in bringing about that renewed creation that he started. Let's pray. God, there is a lot of unimaginable evil and pain and suffering that happens in the world. And I want to ask you for a few things today. One, I want to ask that you would give us the strength to confront it, the strength to look at it, and the strength to deal with it and confront it in the way that you would want us to, and to use the example that you gave us when you were here on earth in order to confront the evil that we see around us, to not turn a blind eye to it, to not use the hope that we have in you as a form of escapism, where we're just using it to brush off difficult things and to make them lesser than they actually are. You did not do that when you came here. When you helped people, you were down here. You didn't brush off their suffering. You didn't brush their troubles aside. You confronted them head on. And then you served as a light to counteract that. So please, I want to ask that you would help us do the same. When we hear about and when we see and when we are presented with difficult things like what we've talked about today, please help us to confront it, but confront it in the way that you want us to. Confront it not just using the methods that you've taught us to use by serving as a light in the world, but also to do it in light of the fact that you are coming back to restore all of creation someday, and to help us patiently wait for that moment, not in a passive sense, but in a sense that we would be going out into the world and doing the things that you want us to do in order to partner with you in bringing that new reality to earth. Amen.